Awesome. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here today. We're here to talk about Nars, which is how you will hear them from pretty much now on. But Nars stands for non-academic requirements. Um, there we go. So what are NARs? So NARs, again, are your non-academic requirements, and these are set out by the school and our placement partners that we have agreements with. They are a series of requirements that um, are related to kind of allowing you to go on placement, and more importantly, they allow you to like these are kind of simulated what you will see when you get into the workforce as well. So there's a lot of requirements, including vaccinations and police checks and a whole lot of requirements that you won't necessarily study in a classroom, but these are very important to your success as a student here at Fleming College and moving forward into your career. So there's a whole bunch of different requirements that you will experience depending on the program that you're a part of. Requirements differ a lot, but you'll see some common themes between the programs here. The most common ones are the immunization form and the vulnerable sector check, the police check. And we're going to talk about those a little bit more in depth today, but not a whole lot because it can be a lot of information. And it can be a little overwhelming when you know nothing about it. So going over the immunization form a little bit to get started here, you'll need immunizations for your MMR, your varicella, your hepatitis B, tetanus, COVID, flu shots, and TB testing. And these are things that can all be covered by health services here at the college, or you might already have some of these from like your childhood. You might have some blood work that shows these immunizations already. We'll talk more about that later. Other sort of NARs that you could expect to see are the vulnerable sector check. We'll talk about that again, your first aid and CPR training. And there are a bunch of miscellaneous consent forms that you'll experience, and those definitely do vary by program to program. Um, so the most important thing that we can kind of talk about NARS is your NARS deadlines. These are the most important part of actually getting on and into your placements. These NARS deadlines, which we'll talk about a lot more later on, they are not flexible. They are very rigid in when you have to have them done by. You will know well in advance when your NARS deadlines are. You will receive multiple communications about your NARS deadlines and your requirements. I know it can sound scary at first, but once you kind of get the ball rolling, you'll see that things just kind of fall into place, and some requirements only require just a few minutes of effort. So the sooner you get started on your NARS, the more equipped you are to be successful in your studies and in your placements and moving into your chosen careers. Um, so odds are you'll see your program on the screen here. There are a lot of programs that have NARS. There are some programs that have more NARS than others, and we'll kind of get into some of the important ones in the next slide here. But there's a whole host of programs that Fleming offers that have non-academic requirements with varying degrees um, of actual needs here. So we'll go into two important programs that have earlier NARS dates or NARS deadlines than other programs here. So the first one is the PSW Living Classroom, known as PWR. This one has a deadline of May 28th. And the reason that this one is so early on in the semester is because as soon as you start this program, you're basically on placement. So it's very important that these deadlines are met as soon as possible. Um, and you'll kind of learn more about the requirements as you start your program here, but there are some things that you can start before you come into Canada, which again, we'll talk into. But again, practical nursing and personal support worker have very similar NARS deadlines in June. So it's very important that you start working on these programs now or these NARS now if you are in these programs. I have this slide up because I want people that are in the or students that are in these programs now to be aware of these deadlines moving in to arriving into Canada. It's very important that you get started on these as soon as possible. So we are going to talk about the NARS website today a little bit. After the slideshow here, I'm going to go through the website. I'm going to show you how you can click on your programs requirements. There's a bunch of hyperlinks there. It's a great tool. I just have this slide up here as a QR code. If you want to scan this now, it will open up the NARS website on your phone if you want to click through while I'm talking about some portions of the NARS website. But the NARS website has requirements by program, has all of your deadlines, specific documents. There's also frequently asked questions on the NARS website. The NARS website is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tool for understanding your NARS. And again, we're going to talk about it a little bit more after the presentation here. So continuing on a little bit about the NARS website, the requirements by program is pretty great because it lists it by not only by program, but it also lists it by semester level. So it's pretty nice. If you don't know what your NARS deadline is, you can go onto the website and be like, okay, I'm in practical nursing and I'm going into semester 2. You can just click by practical nursing and it'll take you right down to the semester level that your NARS deadline is at. I just know offhand that it's April 8th going into the next term, so that's what it will be. But again, the NARS website will have everything listed about the requirements by the website. So a great tool that we'll go over a little bit. Again, similar story about the deadlines and the requirements listed by the semester level and the semester that you're going into. So spring 2026 is the one that I believe most of you will be joining us here for. So we'll go into this a little bit more in just a moment here. So once you have all of your requirements, kind of what do you do with them? So we're partnered with an external company called Verified by Synergy Gateway. Its name is Verified, but internally in the school, you will always refer to it, or you will hear it referred to as Synergy. Synergy is where you upload all of your documents. They are the ones that actually verify that you meet all of the non-academic requirements to go on to your placement. You will get information about how to log into Synergy when you actually start your program, like within the first couple days. When you arrive in Canada and when you start your program, you'll receive a login. If you do not log into Synergy within, like, let's say the first week, you are able to contact the NARS office and I'm able to reset your password and we can get you in to Synergy. So you don't need to worry about rushing to get access because you'll have a lot of other things on your mind and Synergy will probably be near the bottom. So if you don't log into Synergy, it's okay. We can still get you in and you will still be able to upload everything in a timely manner. Um, on the website, there is a lot of tips and tricks that Synergy or that we have about Synergy to help you get started. There might even, I think there's ways about how you can actually upload documents, how you can update your vulnerable sector check for free, which is a pretty nice tip. There's lots of ways, lots of information about the pricing and whatnot, when you need to book an ERV, when you need to book a follow-up ERV, and those are terms that you'll learn more about later. So again, the website is a wonderful tool to help you get information about how to use Synergy. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the vulnerable sector checks because as I mentioned earlier, there are two requirements that are pretty uniform between all of the programs, but they take probably the most amount of time to get started. And the most important one here is the vulnerable sector check. And the reason this is the most important is because you are unable to start this requirement until you actually arrive in Canada. So what this means is if you recall back to the programs where I showed that had earlier NARS dates, like one in May and June, it's very important that you start your vulnerable sector check almost as soon as you get into your residence in Canada, because it can take a long time for you to get it. Depending on which police service you use, the length of time may vary a little bit. For example, in Peterborough, I believe it's like 3 to 5 weeks, which is considerably faster than if you live outside of Peterborough and you need to use the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police. It can take upwards of 2 months to get your VSC. So it's very important that you start this requirement as soon as possible. Because there is absolutely no way around having this requirement. If you do not have this by your NARS deadline, then there is a very high chance that you're not going to go on placement or you won't be NARS compliant by your deadline. And there's serious consequences if we get to that point. But I don't want to scare you with that information. I just want to let you know that the vulnerable sector check is very important to get started. So you will need two pieces of government issued identification. My understanding is you can use your passport or your study permits as well. But usually, I think I've heard of a lot of students when they get to Canada, they apply for a photo ID card, kind of in lieu of like a driver's license or something like that. And that's a very useful piece of identification, not just for getting your vulnerable sector check, but just for your duration in Canada. It's a very useful piece of ID. International students who do not have Canadian identification are required to provide a valid passport or a study work permit and student card. So to obtain a VSC, you need a letter from the college. This can be downloaded from the Nars website. I will show you this after the presentation here as well. The letters just go program by program, detailing what information you need to submit, but you do need to have one to start your vulnerable sector check application. Um, Oh yeah, and so there is one requirement. If students do live in Toronto, you need a specific code in order to start your application with Toronto Public Police or Toronto Police. If you do live in Toronto, you can contact the NARS office and we can give you a specific code that you can use to uh, initiate your vulnerable sector check application. So in that event, just reach out to us and we can give you some more tips about how to start that process. So I'll go over a little bit about the immunization form because unlike the vulnerable sector check, the immunization form is something that can actually be started like right now. As soon as we're done this presentation, you could probably even start this. For most programs, a completed immunization form will need to be completed, but most importantly, it has to be signed by a healthcare provider, either one from your home country or conveniently, Julie, who is in this call here, is a healthcare provider. And so if you don't know what you need or you don't know what you have, or you just really, have an uneasy sense about what you need done, Julie is a wonderful source to speak to about the immunization form, and she can sign off on all of your documents and can give you a lot of helpful tips about how to complete this. So a lot of you probably have shots from when you were a child or from when you were younger in your youth. It is absolutely beneficial to bring that document with you to Canada, even if it's not in English, as this is something that can, like we can work around a lot of requirements here, and it's better to understand what you do have moving in so that we can get you what you need. Because starting from scratch would be a long and arduous process for yourself that you probably just don't want to go through. A lot of poking and prodding with needles that we just don't really need to do might seem unnecessary. I think a last point here is about booking appointments with health services here at the college. Conveniently, the NARS office is just down the hallway from health services, so Julie is just a couple steps away from health services. However, starting in the beginning of semesters, health services appointments do fill up pretty quickly. So if you meet with Julia and it is deemed that you need some shots or whatnot, you can book appointments with health services. It's important to do that as soon as you know that you need to do that so that you can get an appointment because they can book up pretty quickly and then you're waiting weeks and it's not great. Okay, so this is something that has changed a lot year over year. So previously, you would need to upload your study and or work permit to Synergy. However, that is no longer a requirement. It's kind of been replaced by this International Student Placement Attestation and Undertaking, which is a form that you upload in lieu of your study and work permits. And basically, from a NARS office perspective, it just says that you understand that you need, or you understand all of the documents that you need to go on placement and to be successful. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but essentially there's just a document that you sign and you upload that to Synergy. It says that you understand everything you need to go on placement. Before I get off this slide here, Stefania, is there anything you want to add to this before I kind of move on?
I can talk about it after your presentation.
Okay.
I have a little bit more information about this. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
So the last thing I'll say is that if you do have questions about this, please talk to International Student Services, not necessarily the NARS office. Odds are I will just direct you straight back to them if you ask me questions about this. This is not typically the NARS's office of expertise. Uh, so I know that was a relatively quick and brief presentation. I didn't want to go too in depth on the slides because there's a lot of information, and a lot of times if you just throw a lot of word salad at someone, it doesn't mean a whole lot. So from this point on, I'm going to go over the website and I can show you kind of how it's broken down, and I can show you useful ways about how to track which requirements that you need. So if you just give me one moment, I will pull that all up. Okay, can everybody see it there?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the Nars website. It's broken down with tabs all along the top here. So when you first come into it, it's just going to have a little blurb about kind of what the Nars is, what the Nars office does. Um, so if we move along here, there's a tab for FAQs, for frequently asked questions. Something about what happens if you miss your deadline. Most commonly, you just speak to your program coordinator and you'll understand what you need to do moving forward from there. Um, Tips about CPR training, tips about the vulnerable sector check, what the NARS statuses mean, or sorry, NARS, what the synergy statuses mean. Everybody needs a conditional pass or a pass to go on their placement, as well as tips about how to book with health services and synergy appointments. So the NARS FAQ page here, very useful for frequently asked questions before you come to the NARS app. Before you come to the NARS office, it's useful to just look over this. Maybe your question is simply answered and you don't have to waste your time or our time or anybody else's time. You can just get the answer you need. So the next tab over here is about the NARS deadlines. This is a very important page where if you aren't sure when you need to have everything done by, you can look here and it will tell you everything that you need to know about your deadlines here. So let's say we're starting in the spring 2026. Thankfully, we have a bunch of hyperlinks here that will lead you. This is updated pretty regularly about the upcoming semesters here. So let's say you're starting in spring 2026. So it brings us down to spring 2026 deadlines. And let's say we're starting in the PN program. So we scroll down, it goes down by program here, and we're in practical nursing. So we're looking for PN, practical nursing. We're starting in our first semester, which is just right here. And then it has the NARS deadline right next to it there. So the NARS deadline is June 18th if you're entering into your first semester of practical nursing. Another common popular program would be personal support worker, which is just a little bit down here. Where is it? Right here. So personal support worker, the code is PWS, but you just see personal support worker. Here, it's up here. Sorry, I was looking at the semester 2-1. Personal support worker, you're entering into your first semester. Your NARS deadline is June 17th, 2026. So depending on what program and what semester you're going into, the NARS deadline page on the NARS website is very useful. Clearly outlines when your deadline is, and it's also nice to know when your future deadlines are so that you can remain compliant throughout your entire academic process here at Fleming College here. So scrolling back up to the top, we can go to the next tab, which will cover the requirements by the program. The fabulous thing about this page is that everything here is a hyperlink, so it takes you to everything that you need to know instantly. So again, let's say we're coming here to Fleming to be a practical nurse. You would just go down to practical nursing right here. It's a hyperlink, so you just click on it. It takes you right down to the PN and all of its subcategories. And these are all of the non-academic requirements for the PN program. So it seems like a lot, but the wonderful thing again is that you can click on each requirement here and it will give you more information about that specific requirement. So we can click on the immunization form right here. And this talks about immunizations. It tells you about where you can submit them, uh, requirements by program. Sorry, I was looking for the link. So if you want to book an appointment with Julie, it's right here on the immunization page. You can literally just click this link and it will take you right to how to book an appointment with Julie. A wonderful tool to use. And then if you actually want to look at the immunization form, you can download it right from here. You can just click the immunization form and it pulls it up here. Now, I actually believe that if you do not have access to My Campus right now, you actually can't download this specific form. I think there are other ways to get it, but there are some documents on this website where you need access to My Campus in order to download them. And I believe this is one of them, but this is the immunization form here. It's a lot to look at if you don't know what you're looking at specifically. So if you see this and you get anxiety about looking at it like I do sometimes, of course, you're more than welcome to book an appointment with Julie, who can help you understand everything that's on this page, what you need, and she'll guide you about what kind of documents you need to understand the blood work that is required here. So we'll go back to requirements by program, and we'll go back down to PN. And we'll look at another requirement, so the vulnerable sector check. again, the immunization form and the vulnerable sector check are probably the two most important requirements that you have for your program because they take the longest amount of time to actually complete. So this is a pretty useful tool because it will let you know which police service you need to utilize in order to start your police record check. I assume most of you will be living in Peterborough when you actually attend Fleming College. Um, so when you um, when you get to this website, when you get to this page here, you can actually just click on the detachment locator here, and it will tell you which police service you need to use. So for example, some of you might live in a little town outside of Peterborough called Omemee. You could just click here and it will tell you that you need to proceed with Ontario Provincial Police to start your vulnerable sector check. Well, let's say you live on campus. If you click here, it will tell you that you need to use the Peterborough Police Service to start your vulnerable sector check. So you can just input your address into this little bar here, and it will tell you which police service you need to use. Some of you might live in Lindsay, and I need to stop pressing enter. Um, so if you're in Lindsay, you would just use Kawartha Lakes Police Service. It can be a little confusing if you live in the city of Kawartha Lakes, but not specifically in Lindsay, because that first little town I mentioned, Omemee, uses Ontario Provincial Police, but it's part of Kawartha Lakes. So it can be a little confusing where you need to use Kawartha Lakes Police Service or Ontario Provincial Police. So always useful to use this little website here on the Vulnerable Sector Check page to understand which police detachment you need to use to start your vulnerable sector check. So as I mentioned, there are letters that you need to submit to start your vulnerable sector check. Conveniently on the vulnerable sector check page on the Nars website, there is a whole list of letters that you can choose from here to start your vulnerable sector check. So for example, I'll click on practical nursing. This opens up the letter. You would just change the date and you would enter in your information down here where it's required, and you would just submit this to the police detachment that you need to in order to initiate your vulnerable sector check. Just go back. So again, you can see a whole host of the requirements here, including standard first aid, CPR, the mask fit test, and everything else that is required to be a practical nurse. The only other thing, the last thing, I'm not going to go through all of these hyperlinks here, but the last thing that I will mention about standard first aid and CPR is that there are actually only 4 providers that Fleming College will accept. So if you click on the first aid and CPR portion, you will see the list right here in the first little bit written in red here. So St. John Ambulance, Red Cross, PeriMed, and Heart and Stroke are the approved providers for CPR and first aid that Fleming uses. If you do not use either of these 4, you will likely be rejected in Synergy, and you will have to find a way to do to get it from the correct provider. So that's all I'm going to talk about for the requirements here. Again, you can just go by program. It's all listed. So you can look at if you're doing a paramedic, it has everything listed here. These are all hyperlinks. They're all great resources to understand your non-academic requirements. What I'm actually going to do when I'm done talking about the website in just a minute here is I'm going to post the link to the website here in the chat so that everybody can favorite it or you can save it in whichever way is convenient for yourself. Save it to your phone, take a picture of it. I don't know, whatever's easiest for you. But I think it's very important that everybody saves this website, the non-academics requirements department website. It's incredibly important moving forward and for understanding what your NARs are. So moving along, the requirements tab here, these are just the links. These are what the hyperlinks lead to when we're talking about the requirements by program. So everything from the immunization page that we just talked about to the mask fit tests, like you can get more information about the specific requirement that you have questions about. So again, the requirements is a wonderful tab, wonderful resource for you to use to understand your requirements. There's also tips for international international students here about immunizations, bringing your previous immunization forms to Canada, which are very useful, um, as well as which COVID vaccines you have. The COVID vaccines are still a requirement, so it's very important that you still have these on the immunization form. On the tips page here, there's a link that shows you all of the COVID vaccinations that are approved in Canada. So if you don't know if the shot that you received in your home country is equated here in Canada, there's a pretty easy way for you to determine that just by looking on the website here. There's a whole host here, so odds are that you have. Okay, so there's also tips about how to access Synergy. Um, there's a link to even start Synergy right here, what to do if you forget your password, tips about how to book an ERV, an electronic readiness verification, which is what Synergy calls it. Just about how to get all your documents uploaded. Important information, and one of the more important tips on here is how to update your VSC, your vulnerable sector check, for free. If your VSC expires while you are in Canada or while you are in your program here, if you let it expire, you do have to book a new ERV, which costs $57. So there is a way to avoid that if you pay attention to when it expires and you pay attention to the steps to update it for free. Um, there are ways that you can do that to avoid yourself an untimely fee that is just unnecessary. Lots of ways to get around, or not get around, but to move through being compliant with your VSC. You just need to be proactive in getting to it and getting it done. You cannot let things expire because that's just how you get bogged down in administration and fees and whatnot. So the more you stay on top of your VSC and your NARS, the easier your time is at Fleming College. Uh, things to look for before you book your ERV. And then here's the associated fees. So it's $51 to book an ERV. Every single time you do it, that's what it's going to cost you. There are ways to book uh, cheaper ones, like let's say you book an ERV, but you're missing a document. You can do a follow-up, which is only $10. It just kind of goes case by case depending on what you have uploaded and what you're missing. And then there's just more tips about what to upload here. So the last page here is the NARS office hours. Again, I know this is a lot of information, so when you get to Canada and when you start your programs here, if you're still kind of lost in the haze about what you need specifically with your NARS, you're more than welcome to come speak to either myself or Julie, and we can help guide you on your requirements. We have our office hours listed here. So my office hours are open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from the times that you can see here. They're also posted right outside of our door. So if you're just wandering down the hallway, you can check on that. And of course, we're always open on email, I should say. You can always email us with your questions, and we'd be more than happy to answer your questions the best we can there. Emails, we can get bogged down depending on the time of year. So if you send us an email and we don't get back to you right away, please understand that we're constantly busy here in the office, and we do our best to reply to students as fast as I can. But sometimes we just get pulled away for reasons. So if you don't hear from me right away, it's just I'll get to you at some point. So that concludes what I have for right now. We can likely move into the question and answer portion of this presentation here. I'm not sure the best way that we want to go about sit here, Stefania, but I
Yeah.
see we have questions in the chat here, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you did it in the past, but more than happy to answer questions, or if I want to read them, or if you want to read them, however you want to do it.
Sure. I do have a few slides about the immigration documents, so maybe we'll do that first, and then
Yep.
I do see some questions already about COVID vaccinations and things like that. So maybe you can kind of prepare for that while I talk. In the meantime, Sia, are you able to just quickly talk about the Slido, the survey?
Yeah, awesome. Of course. So thank you, everybody. The Slido that you'll see on your screen once I make it live is just a way for us to get some feedback on how the session went for you. If there's something that you think we could have improved on or covered a little bit more, or the way the session was introduced, or how we communicated with you before the session, whatever feedback that you're able to provide is great. And then we can use that to improve for new students, and, take that back basically. So once I launch the Slido, sorry, I keep saying slide. No, Slido. Once I launch the Slido, you'll be able to give us your feedback. And once again, I want to point out it's anonymous, so we won't know, if your name is not attached to it. And so please feel free to give us your feedback. Stefania, did you want me to launch it now and keep it
Yeah.
open?
Why don't you launch it now and keep it open until the end of the session? So you have time. You don't have to do it right now, but just know that it's there. And if you could just it might take just a few seconds for you to answer the couple of questions that we have. Perfect. And in the meantime, I will share my screen and I'll go into the immigration documents that are required. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you see my screen, the PowerPoint? Yep, perfect. Okay. All right. So let's talk about, Mackenzie just talked a little bit about the international student placement attestation an undertaking. So that is a form that you have to complete in order to be able to go on placement. So any international student would have to complete and sign the form to confirm that they have the required documents, immigration documents to go on placement. So this is really important for you to understand what you are signing off. So it's important that you read the form carefully and that if you have questions, that you come to International Student Services and talk to either myself or Christina before you sign the form. So it's really important that you know what you're signing off on, because it can have serious implications. If you go on placement without the required documents, it can have serious implications on future immigration applications, including your post-graduation work permit application. So make sure that you do have everything that is said on the form. I also want to say that this information applies right now as with the current immigration regulations. There is an update that we're expecting shortly, actually April 1st, from Immigration Canada. And that might change things a little bit. So right now, this is the process that we have, and it applies to you right now. This could change in the future, but right now is what you need to know.
IRCC announcement. As of April 1st, 2026, post-secondary international students no longer need a separate co-op work permit for placements or internships. If you applied already for a co-op work permit, you can withdraw your application, or IRCC may withdraw your application and send a letter which explains that you don't need a co-op work permit to participate in a student work placement. Requirement: you have conditions printed on your initial study permit that say you're allowed to work on campus. Scan the QR code to read more on the IRCC website. If you have further questions, email international@flemingcollege.ca.
Okay, so this is an example of the immigration medical exam e-medical receipt. So you probably have seen this, where if you went for your medical, it will have the visit date at the top. So the visit date here says November 16th, 2021. So a year from this date is when the medical exam expires. So when you look at the expiry date below, the one here, the 25th of April, 2029, that is applicable to your passport. So that is not the expiry date of your medical exam. It is always 1 year from the visit date. Okay, let's talk a bit about the study permit as well. So as I mentioned earlier, when you change your college, or if you get your first study permit, it has to list Fleming College as your DLI, and it will list Fleming College as your DLI, which is the designated learning institution. If you are a returning student, so you are already here at Fleming and you're taking a program and you're now going into a second program, you will be able to begin your placement as long as your study permit is still valid with that study permit. If you are coming from another college, you have to not only apply but also obtain a new study permit before you can begin your program here at Fleming.
IRCC announcement. As of April 1st, 2026, post-secondary international students no longer need a separate co-op work permit for placements or internships. If you applied already for a co-op work permit, you can withdraw your application, or IRCC may withdraw your application and send a letter which explains that you don't need a co-op work permit to participate in a student work placement requirement. You have conditions printed on your initial study permit that say you're allowed to work on campus. Scan the QR code to read more on the IRCC website. If you have further questions, email international@flemingcollege.ca.
Okay, and that's an example of a study permit. So it lists Fleming College. Under the conditions, it will say may accept employment on or off campus if meeting eligibility criteria, and then it mentions one of the regulations in the immigration law. Okay, again, if you have questions about your immigration documents, email us at international@flemingcollege.ca. If there's restrictions, email us, let us know, and you can also reach out to IRCC, so Immigration Canada, directly if you're not sure about something. You can visit our website, which has a lot of really good information. We also have drop-ins, or not drop-ins, same day appointments, where you can meet with myself or Christina every day. So you can book an appointment through your iSent app. If you need to meet with us, if you're not sure about something in your immigration documents, it's really important to reach out. Before you sign the attestation form, it's really important that you know what you're signing off on, and that you actually have your documents, because the placement site could at any point ask for those. So if you don't have the right documents, you need to obtain them first before you sign off on the attestation. Okay, so that's it from my end. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Chris, you have your hand up. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Yes, thank you, Stefania. It's just a quick reminder for students coming to Canada. There is a lot of information for you to, understand things, and they are all completely different than what they are in your country. One of the things that is very important is to keep on top of your documentation's deadline. Our RCC basically says that it's on you to keep track of those things. It's on you to understand or to comply with your study permit conditions, with your co-op work permit conditions, working hours, etc. So as a reminder, international student is here, international student services is here to actually help you with those things, but we are not here to remind you of those deadlines, okay? It's on you. So make sure that you add that to your phone, to your calendar, make sure that you're on top of your documentation, of your deadlines for Nars, for everything college, including your assignments and things like that, because if you miss those deadlines, the consequences specifically for international students are sometimes catastrophic. And I say catastrophic because sometimes you have to extend your study permit, there's more money involved for your living costs and all kinds of things. So I don't want to put the fear on you, but it is important to keep those deadlines, keep track of those, okay? So anything you need, we are here to support you. Anything, okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that's really important to know. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording at this point. We're going to go into questions.